Hi again, Mark here from Talking Bass. Today I'm going to take a look at an absolute bass classic in the shape of Teen Town by Weather Report, played and written by the legendary Jaco Pastorius. Now, this is one of those tunes that has become the standard for any bass players looking to develop their playing and technique. It's a pretty difficult line, especially for beginners, and it's one of those pieces that you can be working on for months and months or even years. But in all that time, you'll be developing almost every area of your bass playing to such a level that most other pieces that you previously struggled with will seem within your reach. Now, there are a bunch of different lessons all over YouTube dealing with this tune, but I'm going to approach it from a slightly different angle. Because I learned Teen Town as a student around about 1993, so roughly about 28 years ago, and I remember it all too well. It took me ages to get it down, and I learned it the way most people tend to play it and how most of the transcriptions are written. And I've played it that way all these years, but recently I saw a rough video recording of a Weather Report concert on YouTube and had a sudden realization while watching his fingers. The way most people play this is making use of mostly fretted notes, but in that video it's pretty obvious that Jaco is using a lot of open strings. So I've completely retranscribed the piece to get as close as I can to the way that Jaco played it. I've watched several videos and also listened very closely to the original recording, and I think I've got it pretty close. So today I'm going to work through that transcription and give you some pointers on getting it down. As always, the lesson material and drum tracks can be found over at Talking Bass, so just click the link in the info below, and while you're there, check out the lesson map where you'll find hundreds more lessons on every aspect of bass playing, all systemized and organized for ease of navigation. Then, if that floats your boat, subscribe to the free membership to gain access to a ton of extra free resources and downloads like the 25 Bass Groove Challenge and the Scale Reference Manual ebook. Okay, so let's have a listen to the bass line at the original tempo of 128 beats per minute. Okay, so this bass line works through a continuous chord sequence of C13, A13, F13 and D13, which is a kind of 1-6-4-2 progression, or which you can see as more of a two-part sequence of C to F with a drop down of a minor third each time. All the chords are dominant 13s, so the parallel harmony allows for that kind of almost melodic sequencing. But whatever the functional relationships, we're learning a bass part that weaves a line through those structures, so it's worth always looking to the chord in effect while learning each phrase. So just as an indication of what those chords sound like, we've got a C13, A13, then up to F13, and then down to D13, which I'm just phrasing there without the sevenths in, so... Okay. So in terms of learning the line, you really want to break it up into its component chunks and learn it phrase by phrase. Each phrase is fairly well defined and separated, so it's pretty easy to do. The first phrase sounds like this. Okay? So for the first part, we come in on the second 16th note of the bar. So it's 1 E and A, so 1 E and A. And we start on that C there, third fret of the A string, and then each time we're coming back to this C. So we have C up to the C, 5th fret of the G string, back to the C, up to the B flat, the 3rd fret of the G string, and then back to the C, up to the G at the 5th fret of the D string, and then back to the C. So, okay? And there's two ways of playing this. You can fret the C with the 1st finger there, the 3rd fret of the A string, and you'll always do that, but you have a choice with this B flat. So we hit with the 4th finger there for the C up on the G string, and then for the B flat, we can either play with the 2nd finger there of the fretting hand, or bar across with the 1st finger. Now, when you do that, if you're going to bar across, you've got to be careful not to let that low C drone along. You know, you don't want that. You've got to cut that bottom C off as you do it, which is why a lot of people will use the 2nd finger, you know, so that you get separation there. But I think the way Jaco plays it when you see him is actually by using the barring. So you just got to be sure to switch the pressure over. Okay? Now the next part of that phrase is the part that a lot of people play like this. You know, with fretted notes. But the way that Jaco plays it is like this. Okay, so we're using the open strings in there. So we've got the D sharp there at the 1st fret of the D string leading up to the E at the 2nd fret, and then the open G string, then the A at the 2nd fret, so then back to the open G string, then the E again, 2nd fret of the D string, open D string, and then down to the C sharp at the 4th fret of the A string. Okay, so as opposed to... And when you do this, using the open strings, it does give you more of that separation between all of the notes, because you've got to be more careful with it, because you've got to be careful not to let those open strings drone on. But when you do it, it does have more of that separation. When you listen to Jaco's line on the original, you can hear that. Okay? So let's put those two parts of the phrase together. So 3, 4, 1. Okay. Now, in terms of the picking hand, when you play this, you're going to be starting with the 2nd finger there when you hit the D string, and you can hammer that on. Then that brings you to the 1st finger for when you hit the open G string. Then, when you play, after playing those few notes, when you get to the open G string again, you're going to be raking down onto the D string. So we go from the open G, rake down to the E there. So you've got to be really careful to cut that G off with the underside of this finger. Because you don't want that. You don't want that little minor 3rd. Okay, so... And then you're going to be playing the D string with the open D string picked with the 2nd finger there. And then that leaves you to hit the C sharp there, picked with the 1st finger. So it's very important to always be keeping track of which fingers you're using in the picking hand. You want to do this at a slow tempo so that when you build up speed, you're not getting finger twisted. Okay, so... Okay, so that's the first phrase. So now let's move on to the next one. And this next phrase is the one that a lot of people find difficult when they first learn it. So the phrase sounds like this. So we've got quite a long line with a few position shifts in there. So we start on the F. So F, and then A flat to the A, or G sharp to the A, all on the E string. So 1st fret, 4th fret to the 5th fret. Then C, D, C, so 3rd, 5th, 3rd frets on the A string. Then the F at the 3rd fret of the D string, and then the open A. Then we work up G, G sharp, A. We pick the first of those two notes, so G, G sharp, and then we hammer on the next note. And a lot of the time, when you're first learning this, you might pick all of those notes. But if you listen to the original, and especially if you slow it down, you can hear that there's a little bit of legato going on between the G sharp and the A. Okay, so after the G sharp A, we then move up to the C at the 5th fret of the G string, and then we have a position shift. So we play that with the first finger, move up to the D, D, D sharp, E. Okay. Oops. And then we have B, A, B, D, D. Okay, so 9th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, open D string twice. Okay, so the whole thing. Again, this is fairly syncopated in the rhythm, so we're starting on the 2nd 16th note of the beat. So 1 E, so. Okay, so as you come up, you have that little hammer on, but then when you get to this C to D, you have to make that position shift. And that can be the part that really throws you, because if you're not careful, you'll hear a little slide in there, and you don't want that. You want to be able to move quickly, picking both of those notes to try and make it as flawless as possible. Also, when you get up to the E at the top, if you've kept all the finger picking correct as you're working up, you should be able to play a rake from the E up at the top at the 9th fret of the G string down to the B at the 9th fret of the D string. Okay, so. So make sure that when you get onto that C there at the 5th fret of the G string, you're picking it with the second finger. Okay, so just take small parts there, isolate them so that you can really focus on the actual finger picking in there. So remember, C there, second finger of the picking hand, the middle finger. Try it really slow. And make sure that movement, you don't make the movement until you pick. So you don't want a slide. You want it to be as flawless as possible. And when you get up to speed, you're really going to have to be moving that hand. You have the choice in terms of the actual fingering of the fretting hand there of either playing with the first finger and then shifting up that first finger and then second finger, fourth finger and then barring with the fourth finger, or you can use 1, 2, 3 so that then you're using the third finger to bar across. So okay, either way, it doesn't matter as long as you're getting the notes under your fingers. So again, through that phrase, I'm starting with that F. I'm either picking with the second finger or the first finger. It doesn't really matter. Picking with the first finger for the next note and hammering on from that G sharp to the A. And then when we get to the C to D and C, it's 1, 2, 1 in the picking hand. Leading us to the F, which we're picking with the second finger. That allows us to play the open string with that first finger. Then you've got second finger again, then first finger, hammer on, allowing us to move up to that second finger there. So again, like I say, you want to be keeping track of the finger picking all the way through. And this applies to whatever piece you're learning. You know, if you're learning a classical piece, it doesn't matter what it is. You really want to be looking at which fingers are taking which notes, especially in these tricky little sections. Most of the time, you can actually just, you know, let the fingers do what they want, you know, if it's not a particularly difficult piece. But when you've got these kind of pieces where you can get finger twisted, you want these waypoints so you can think, okay, when I get to that point, I'm on the second finger. When I get to that point, I'm on the first finger. So that's the second phrase. So next we move on to this. So this is a pretty easy bit. Here we're on a D sharp to the E, 6th fret to 7th fret on the A string. Then we've got the G at the 5th fret of the D string, and then the D at the 5th fret of the A string. In terms of the fretting hand, there I'm using the second finger to the fourth finger for a hammer on, or you could slide it. And then I'm barring with the first finger, or joint barring there for the 5th fret of the D string to the A string. Okay, so pretty straightforward. The next phrase sounds like this. Okay, so we have B, C, C sharp, 2nd, 3rd, 4th frets on the A string. Then we come down A, F sharp, C sharp, so 2nd fret G string and then 4th fret on the D string and A string. Then B, E, C sharp, so 2nd fret A string and then D string and then 4th fret on the A string. And there's a multitude of different ways you could possibly fret this. You can play with the first 3 fingers there, 1, 2, 3. Then 1st finger obviously for the A up on the top, and then you can come down with the 3rd finger using joint barring across. Then 1st finger for the 2nd fret, and then again 3rd finger there for the 4th fret. So all with the first 3 fingers, you can do that. You can use the 4th finger as well, but you'll probably find it a little bit easier to play with that 3rd finger. In terms of the picking there, I'm starting with the 1st finger, so 1, 2, 1, then 2, so it allows you to jump up with that longer 2nd finger for the A on the G string, and then you can come down 1st finger on the F sharp to the C sharp, raked. And then I use the 1st finger there pretty much for all of the next ones. Okay, so I'm just using 1st finger for all of that. And then when you get to that C sharp, you have the choice. If you're on a fretless, you can use a little side to side vibrato, or on a fretted bass, you can just use a little bit of vibrato like that. Either way, you've got this little bend in there, this little bit of vibrato. The next phrase sounds like this. Okay, and again, this is one of those parts that I would have played with a fretted note, but it's not. It's the open D string, then C, 3rd fret of the A string, and then down to the F, 1st fret of the E string. So again, you've got to be really careful here to not allow that open D string to ring out as you come down. So as soon as you have played that open D string, you come down with the 4th finger, the pinky for the C there. It's the 3rd fret of the A string, and the underside of those fingers wants to cut off that open D string. I mean, when you're playing this incredibly fast, it's going to happen anyway, to be honest. But when you're playing it slow, you really do have to be a lot more purposeful with it. So, okay. So I'm playing in terms of the picking there, 1st finger and then 2nd finger for the open string, and then I'm just raking down with the 1st finger from the C down to the F. Okay. The next phrase is another one of those that I would have played completely different. So I'd have played it like this. Okay, but it's not. Okay, so I'll just go through what he's actually playing. So we've got C, C sharp, D, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret on the A string. Then, so E, F, F sharp, 2nd, 3rd, 4th frets on the D string. Then open G string, A flat, and then A, or G sharp and then A. So open string, 1st fret, 2nd fret on the G string. And then coming down, so E flat at the 1st fret of the D string, then open D string, C at the 3rd fret of the A string, and then the open A string. Okay, so again, a lot more open strings. In terms of the rhythm here, we're again starting on the 2nd 16th note of a beat. So we have a beat's rest at the beginning of the bar, so 1, 2, and so it's 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and so 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and so you've really got to be aware of that. If you're pretty much a beginner and you're not used to syncopated 16th note lines, you might end up playing this on the beat, or you just end up quantizing to the wrong parts of the beat. And I've heard people do this so many times, especially beginners, because they're not evolved enough with their actual rhythmic playing to kind of identify where they're supposed to be on those beats. So you really want to focus on that. So 1, 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and okay, so you're always on the 2nd 16th note of beats 2, 3 and 4. In terms of the fretting hand there, you can pretty much use what you want, but I tend to play 1st, 2nd, 4th finger for the C, C sharp, D, and then for some reason then I switch to the 1st, 2nd and 3rd finger. But you can use 1st, 2nd, 3rd finger all the way up, so. And then obviously 1st and 2nd finger for the 2 fretted notes there. But again, you've really got to pay attention when you come down to the actual cutting off of each of the open strings. So I'm using the 1st finger there for the E flat, then hitting the open D string, cutting it off as I move down to the C at the 3rd fret of the A string, and then we've got the open A. Okay, because again, you don't want that D string ringing out. For the next phrase, again, we've got a bunch of open strings. So let's have a listen to how it sounds. So, okay, so we're starting on an open A, and then we're coming up B, C, C sharp. So 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret. Then open D string, D sharp to the E. So open string, 1st fret, 2nd fret on the D string. And then we move up to, so we've got the A flat, G, 7th, 6th and 5th frets on the D string. Then we come up for this line, which any of you that have learned Deantown by Wolfbeck will recognize this little part, and this was quoted in there. We have, so we've got this E flat there up at the 8th fret of the G string, pull off to the D at the 7th fret of the G string, then down to the C at the 10th fret of the D string, and then we have D, 7th fret of the G string, C, 10th fret of the A string, and then the F at the 8th fret of the A string. Okay? So, and that's that phrase there. So all of that together. Okay, and I have no idea why Jaco decided to play the open strings on this one, on the D string, because it would be much easier to actually come up, you know, if you, instead of playing the open D string and then the E flat or D sharp and the E there, play it here, you know, 5th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret. Which is how I've always played it, how I see everybody else play it, but he plays it with that open string, okay? So, and as you can see, it puts you in position for the rest of it. So, like I say, it's a lot harder the way that Jaco plays it, but it must have some reason. Rhythmically on that line, we're coming in on the final 16th note of the first beat. So we've got 1 E and Da, okay? So 1 E and Da. Okay, so again, it's a syncopated 16th note line, 1 E and. And when I play it up at this top part, again, I'm raking when I'm coming down. So I'm coming down across the G string, the D string, and the A string. Okay. Next, we have a little transitional bar where we play. Okay, so we've got this little slide or hammer on from the G sharp to the A at the 11th fret to 12th fret of the A string. Then C to D, 10th fret to the 12th fret of the D string. And then we have the C up at the top here at the, the 17th fret, okay, on the final 2 16th notes of the bar. So, 1. For the next phrase, again, we've got something way harder the way that Jaco plays it. So I'll just work through how he plays it and then show you how I would have normally played it. So we have this line. Okay, so we've got the G at the 3rd fret of the E string, then open A string and back to that G. So we have to cut off that open string first of all, the first problem, before going back to that G, or as we go back to the G. So, and then C, open D string, and then to the C. So 3rd fret A string, open D string, back to the 3rd fret. So, and then we have this. So we've got E up to the A, so 2nd fret on the D string and G string, and then we come down this D major arpeggio pretty much. We've got the A, F sharp and the D, so it's 2nd fret G string, 4th fret D string, and then 5th fret on the A string. And then C sharp B, 4th fret, 2nd fret on the A string. So, okay, so. Now, I find this way harder because normally I would have played it with the 5th fret instead of the open strings. So G, A, G. So the 5th fret there for the A, then same again on the A string, which sets you up perfectly for playing this line because you can then start it with the first finger, the picking hand. So you have first finger, second finger, which works nicely, and then you just rake down, F sharp to the D. So it all works out nicely. You know, it feels way better. But with the open strings, you have to start that E there with the second finger. So you're moving from the second finger up to the first finger, which is just weird. So no matter how you play it, there's gonna be some kind of issue there. So second finger of the picking hand, that is, for the E, first finger for the A up at the top, and then rake down. So, and then just second finger, first finger when you get down onto the C sharp and the B. So, you know, I'm showing you the way that Jaco played it here, but I think, you know, I will continue to play it the way that I like playing it because it is so much easier. That is way, way easier. But if you want to do it the way that Jaco plays it, and certainly plays it live, you put those open strings in. And then finally, we have another open string line, which is completely different to the way I would have played it. So we've got the open G string, then down to the E flat at the first fret of the D string, then open D string, and then the C at the third fret of the A string. Oh, sorry. Then F, F sharp, G. Okay, so first fret, second fret, third fret on the E string. So now again, I mean, I think this works really well because the way that you would normally play it fretted just looks weird. It's just a weird pattern and doesn't look very, it's not the kind of thing that you would automatically or instinctively come up with from a bass perspective. But when you've got those open strings in there, it tends to make a lot more sense. So you just have to be careful again of those open strings and, you know, cutting them off as you come down. Okay, and then you've got the offbeat 16th notes there for the F, F sharp and G. So really focus on getting the rhythm right down at the bottom. So, okay. So for the next bar, we have 2 beats rest, 1, 2, and then on the end of 3, we have this line. Okay, so G, A, C, C. So that's 17th, 19th fret on the D string and 17th fret on the G string. Now, then we've got one of the hardest parts of the whole piece just because we've got to jump all the way back down and start again. So, you know, so you got to jump all the way from up here and get right back into it. So, like I said, this is one of the toughest parts, and all you're doing is moving. So this is really, really good practice at making position shifts, and not the kind of progressive position shifting that we've been looking at before. This is just a plain old jump, okay? So you've got to come from there, straight back into that C down there at the third fret of the A string. So this is the same phrase that we had at the beginning, okay? So one thing I would definitely say as a tip is once you've played that, look down here to where you're going to move to. Don't hang around with your gaze looking up at the top, you know, because you're gonna miss it. So you want to be looking at where you're going to go. So, okay, and then just jump straight back down into an octave pattern, okay? Don't just go for the first finger. You want to be ready to hit it. So that's pretty much the whole of the section that I'm covering, because then we just repeat. So after, okay, we just start again. And just work through it until we get to the end with, okay, so we finish it there. Then there are another 2 bars, and then we repeat that. Okay, so I'm not going to bother wasting time on that because it's exactly the same phrase, but basically you just wait another 2 bars and then play it again. But that's the whole of that section. Now there is another section later on. You know, you've got all that, and then you've got a few other little bits. So, you know, it's worth looking through the whole thing, working it all out, and, you know, learning the whole tune. But for now, this is the part to really get down because this is the trickiest part of the whole thing. So yeah, you want to take this slowly. You know, start out as slow as you need to, and it might take you quite a while to get it under your fingers, depending on your experience level, because you know, there's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of content. You've got position shifts, you've got, you know, barring with the fingers, you've got raking, you've got alternate picking, you've got everything in here. So if you can get this tuned down, especially, you know, at a lower tempo and then build it up, it's going to make a huge difference to your technique. And one of the most important parts of this is keeping it clean. You don't want to be, you know, messy. You got to keep it clean all the time. Just clean technique, blocking off all of those strings that might be making residual noise, you know, taking care with those open strings, making sure that you make nice, clean and accurate, fast position shifts as you're moving up. All of that stuff, but you need to practice it slowly. Don't bother practicing to a metronome. Don't practice playing to the original. Don't practice playing to tracks. Just get it down on your own, away from any of that, so that you just get the notes down and then work on the rhythm at a very slow tempo, and then you can start working with, you know, playing to the original. So I'll just put all of those phrases together at a very slow tempo so you can hear how that sounds. So remember, we're coming on the second 16th note of beat 1. So we have 1. Okay, so you can see and hear there from just working through them that all of those phrases are very separated. So you want to work on each phrase individually. Work on them in isolation. So, you know, spend some time just playing, you know, wait until you've got that down and then work on the next one. Work on that separately as well. Work on it in isolation before putting them both together. And then if you find that there's one of these phrases that's really, really doing your head in and, you know, you're having problems with it, just work on it in isolation until you get it. So, like I said, practice it slowly and then, you know, away from all the drum tracks and stuff. But then, if you want to try along to some drum tracks, I have recorded some at different tempos. So the original is 128 beats per minute, and then I've got them there at 118, 108, and 98. So it comes down in 10 beats per minute, progressively at 10 beats per minute. So let's have a listen to how that'll sound at 98 beats per minute. So stick around on that tempo until you've really got it down. So, really focus on your technique and keeping everything clean at every stage. And then eventually you can move up progressively through those different tracks. So let's have a listen to how it's going to sound at the full 128 beats per minute. Okay, so that's Teen Town. That should give the majority of you plenty to work on for quite some time. It's one of the best pieces that you can learn for developing a solid, clean bass technique. So don't rush and embrace the grind. And remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, and then get on over to Talking Bass, where you can work through those tracks. Okay? I'll see you next week.